I again want to publicly express my condolences to the family of Rayshard Brooks and update you on additional actions that I am taking today on behalf of the City of Atlanta to address many of the issues that over the past few days have become abundantly clear are problematic within the City of Atlanta. As many of you all know, over a week ago, we announced the creation of a task force, and this was in response to President Obama's challenge to cities across the country to take a proactive look at our use of force policies and to make recommendations. That task force convened for the first time last week, and we anticipated having initial recommendations within 14 days, with community input and final recommendations within 45 days. On Friday evening, we saw the murder of Rayshard Brooks. And as I've said before, I am often reminded of the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. There is a fierce urgency of now in our communities. And that fierce urgency of now says that while our advisory committee continues to work to make recommendations to help us implement and review all of our policies in the City of Atlanta, it is clear that we do not have another day, another minute, another hour to waste. And so as we look forward to receiving their very thoughtful recommendations, and I appreciate their work, in the interim, I am signing an administrative order, a series of administrative orders today, calling upon our Chief Operating Officer, Joshua Williams, to coordinate with the Interim Chief of Police, Rodney Bryant, to immediately adopt and implement reforms of the standard operating procedures and work rules of APD concerning their use of force policies. Specifically, these reforms must comply with state law concerning the use of force, and they will include addressing APD's officers' response to resistance, generally and specifically regarding the use of deadly force in accordance with the principle that officers should use only the amount of objectively reasonable force necessary to successfully protect themselves or others, to effect an arrest or to bring an incident under control when dealing with members of the community, suspects, detainees, etc. Also requiring de-escalation generally and specifically prior to the use of deadly force in accordance with the principle that officers should use de-escalation techniques to gain voluntary compliance and avoid or minimize the use of physical force, and to continuously develop, update, and train officers in de-escalation techniques. Also requiring the reporting of all uses of deadly force by a police officer to our Citizens Review Board, adopting and implementing a duty to intervene, whereby if a police officer sees another officer using force which is beyond reasonable under the circumstances, that they are duty-bound to intercede and prevent that use of force and must immediately report the use of such force to an on-duty supervisor, and also provide lawful restrictions on when an officer may use deadly force toward a suspect who is in a moving vehicle. We understand in Atlanta and across the nation that this is the beginning of a great deal of work that lies ahead of us to make sure that we are doing all that we can do to protect our communities and to follow the principles that were set forth by the Obama-Biden administration on 21st century policing. It's very clear that our police officers are to be guardians and not warriors within our communities. We stand on the strong legacy of civil rights in this city and in this country. And it's for that reason I am also signing an additional executive order that will hopefully allow us, as we continue to grieve and show our frustration and anger as a nation, that will create the framework that will allow us to move to action. And in an effort for us to develop a succinct appeal for human rights, I am signing an administrative order that will convene a body to begin to succinctly articulate our grievances and what we see as our solutions. We hope that this will be a framework in Atlanta and possibly the nation. The actions that I am taking today are a continuation of the criminal justice reform efforts that I began at the beginning of my administration as mayor, which have included the elimination of cash bail bonds in our city, meaning if you get stopped for a traffic ticket and you don't have $200 to pay, you don't stay in jail simply because you are poor. It's also meant that we have asked our City Council to reallocate a significant portion of our corrections budget towards community-based programming, because after we closed our detention center to ICE, it gave us an opportunity, along with the elimination of cash bail bonds, to begin to reimagine and to begin the work to transform our city jail into a center of equity, health, and wellness. And I believe that it is more important than ever that we continue that work in earnest. As we continue to work with our advisory council on the use of force, we expect our first recommendations by June 24th, with final recommendations by July 24th. And it is my assurance to you that we will continue to do the work that we need to do to make sure that all of our communities, each and every person in our community, is treated with dignity and respect. We saw the worst happen on Friday night with Mr. Brooks. It angered me and it saddened me beyond words. But I know that it is my responsibility as mayor of this great city for us to continue to work to put that anger and that sadness into action. And so this is the first of a series of actions and steps that we will take. And I look forward to continuing to work with all of our community stakeholders so that we can begin to heal as a nation and as a city. But as someone who has experienced the sudden death of a loved one, I know that there are no words and no actions that will ever bring them back and will ever fill that void. But I do hope that the public and all of our community partners know that there is a deep and abiding commitment on behalf of this administration to make sure that we're doing all that we can do so that another child does not miss the opportunity to have her father present on her birthday.